verse 7 of Hebrews chapter 8. For if that first covenant, now, we know from reading the Greek, I don't have to explain this to most of you, but in verse 7, the Greek does not have the word covenant there. It simply says, for if that first, that prote. If that first had been faultless, there would have been no occasion to look for a second. However, in the subsequent verses that we're going to study, that you would study if we were to go back and read them and study them a bit more carefully, starting in verse 8, 9, and reading down through verse 10 and 11 and 12, the writer brings in the longest extended quote from the Tanakh, which is the Jeremiah 31 passage. But suffice to say, let me focus on verse 7 and skip over that middle quote from the book of Jeremiah just for a moment. In verse 7, the word covenant here is not found. Likewise, as a bookend in verse 13, which reads, in speaking of a new covenant in the ESV, he makes the first one obsolete, and what is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to vanish. The word covenant, as rendered by ESV, is also missing from the Greek. Now, here's the bugbear. Here's the confusing part or the challenging part. By context, the word covenant belongs in the translation. So I'm not going to fault your translations. The majority of English translations have the word covenant there. ESV, KJV, NIV, and ASB. All of the major translations include the word covenant. There are only a few. It's the minority few. I think, like, say, for instance, the Berean Bible, the Tree of Life version, Young's Literal version. Those translations leave out the word covenant because they're trying to render the Greek as faithfully, kind of word for word wooden translation, which again is missing the word covenant. And the real question is this: even though the context demands that the word covenant there should be included, we know contextually that the word covenant is allowable in the translation. So again, I'm not too harsh on the translations that include them. But the real question is, why didn't the writer include the word covenant in verse 7 and in verse 13 below?